Hi, this is Brandon Spillane from thirstgym.com, and today we're talking about exercise called the conventional deadlift off blocks versus bands. Now, it's a great way to help your conventional deadlift, particularly your lockout and your positioning. So what you're going to need to be able to do this exercise, you're going to need some kind of blocks or mats to elevate the bar on. How high is going to be up to you, depending on where you're having issues and whatnot, but generally 2 to 3 inches is kind of like the gold standard of a place to go. Anything higher, you start to get above the knee, it really starts to become pretty egotistical. You're not going to see a whole lot of translation over to your deadlift. Usually you want to stay around knee level or lower. So I really like these DC blocks. They work great, but you can use mats or whatever else you want. And then we got bands hooked up to our band peg attachments. We got band peg attachments, that's awesome. If not, you can use dumbbells or wrap the band around the bar, put your feet in it, and that works great as well. So you got a couple different options there. Now, what you're going to want to do with this exercise is make sure you understand that you're not going to have as much leg drive out of the exercise. So usually when you're here, your hips are going to be a little bit lower, where here my hips are going to be higher than if I had to go. So my hands are here. If the bar is a little bit lower, I'm going to drop my hips just a little bit. Okay, so just make sure you understand that. And I would say this is an awesome exercise for a lot of conventional deadlifters, because where they have issues is usually going into the knee. So what I mean by that is when the bar comes here around knee level, right here is where conventional deadlifters have a lot of issues, because now you've got to actually move your knees out of the way, and you can't hitch, so you can't slide. So you got to bring your butt forward. So there's this brief period, you can see this window, where conventional deadlifters will have an issue of bringing their hips to the bar. So this works great because, one, we're not having to pull from the floor every time, but this is right before we start to have that issue. So number one, it's going to teach us to drive through that position, which is important to get stronger through it. We develop some speed and some power and some positional awareness through where we're having issues, which is great because obviously the bands are getting harder as the weight comes off the ground, and that forces us to work on that. The other part is that as we get here, again, because of the bands, then it's going to make us use our glutes and our hamstrings to drive our hips forward more towards the bar, rather than being here and having a super strong lockout. So you're kind of getting a 2-for-1 by using the blocks, starting them ideally, if that's where it's at, a little bit below where your sticking point is, and the bands are going to constantly reinforce that throughout the range of motion. Now, I'll walk you through it real quick. Feet are going to take your normal conventional stance. Feet, or the bar is going to be around mid-foot, give or take. You want to give yourself some space. You don't want to be super up next to it. So give yourself some space. Feet right underneath your hips, give or take. Adjust that as needed based on the feel. You're going to take a big breath at the top. Arms are long like hooks. Keep your chest tall. You don't want to overarch, but you do want to make sure that your lats are engaged, your chest is tall. You don't want to be super rounded to start your pull. And then we're just going to do our normal pull. So from here, again, big breath at the top. Okay, so really not too shabby in terms of trying to get into position because of the blocks. We just want to make sure we're in a good position, so as I pull, things go super smoothly. Now, how would you use this exercise in your training program? One, if you're a conjugate person, this would be a dynamic effort cycle you could try. Adjust your percentages as needed, go up just a little bit compared to what you would normally do, because it is less range of motion, so keep that in mind. But I don't use it a whole lot, but I do think it is very possible if you have people that are having issues with that. It's a good way to get more bar touches. Next would be using as your max effort exercise, so working up to like a 1 or 2 rep max for the day, and seeing what your best PR is here, and then seeing how that correlates to a PR without the blocks and just having the bands, and one just having just the blocks and no bands. And then of course, compared to your regular deadlift, you can begin to see some trends of what's going on, and then whether this is actually going to be something that truly helps your deadlift, or if this is just a good way to test where you're at every so often without actually having to do a regular deadlift. I've found that an exercise like this works great for developing lockout strength. That's usually who I use it for, or people that, again, that are struggling with positional awareness here around the knee. Now, if you're not a conjugate person, it's totally okay. This exercise can still have some great merit for you. I really think you could do this after your main work of deadlift for just 2 to 3 sets of like maybe 1 to 2 reps, maybe 2 to 3 reps, and then keeping your RP on the lower end and really focusing on driving your hips through, maintaining that position, and developing your lockout. If you're weak from the floor, probably not the exercise for you, so you can pass on this video. But again, I do think there's some good merit here behind this exercise. So if you got any questions about setup, implementation, anything like that to help your deadlift, please feel free to let me know in the comment section. Thanks. Have a great day.